Welcome to the Portuguese Grand Prix Portimão style, a country that's had some wonderful circuits staging this race in the past, and this keeps up the tradition, no doubt about that. Lots of lovely blind brows, lots of great corners as well. I guess the only frustrating thing, there's a wonderful section of road at the end of the lap, down the hill, over the start-finish line, nice corners just leading onto that. But the only frustrating thing would be some of the other nice corners on the circuit, which are followed by very short straights and then hard braking areas. In other words, if you're a quick driver and you get a corner like turn 1 absolutely right, or turn 6, 7 after the hairpin absolutely right, you don't get much reward because the track then involves braking hard into some sort of hairpin. And then it becomes quite technical for the middle phase of the lap. Dare I say it, a tyre management sector of the lap, followed by, as I say, that wonderful last stretch over the start-finish line. As tough as this 2020 year is for all of us, this COVID year, I repeat the point that it's wonderful to see circuits like Portimão coming into the calendar. And let's hope some of them do have a life beyond 2020. Wouldn't that be nice? So moving on to Friday, very, very slippery. Drift was the word that two drivers, Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen, talked about in their first few laps around the circuit. The cars were just sliding everywhere. The upside to that was looking at some of the car control that was going on. It wasn't power oversteer in the Ronnie Peterson sense of the word, and we got a video on this channel. You can look if you want to see some slow-mo of Ronnie through Copse or Club Corner at Silverstone in 73 in the Lotus 72. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. That's on another video. No, my point is that this was still a low grip morning, and there was some car control on display, notably from a man we kind of take for granted, a driver who does a lot of winning when things are right, but we take the car control for granted. Valtteri Bottas, wow, fabulous. Cross-armed opposite lock everywhere, spraying up the gravel, doing this, doing that. Lewis was fairly quiet, as is his wont these days when things just need to settle down a little bit. But Valtteri was out there showing that, yes, of course he has amazing car control, and it was good to watch. Carlos Sainz, too, in the early laps, looked very good. I think looking at what happened as the afternoon progressed, and here we should make the point that FP2 began with half an hour being spent with all the teams running the new Pirelli prototype tyres. So basically the 1.5 hour session was condensed into 1 hour, and then that 1 hour was foreshortened or delayed or stopped or interrupted because first Pierre had a big engine fire in his Tauri-Honda, and then secondly there was a coming together between Max Verstappen and Lance Stroll going into turn 1. We'll talk about those two incidents in a second. The point I want to make is that when you do have these tire temperature issues, and when it is taking something like 3 to 4 perfectly managed laps in order to get the right cycle of heat into the tires, you've got a lot of drivers under pressure to then do a lap at that specific moment. And I think that's why we saw quite a lot of incidents today. That's particularly why we saw the Lance Stroll, Max Verstappen incident. So there's quite a lot of pressure on the drivers to get lap times. And that's why you see a driver like Lewis Hamilton not in the top 3 today, because when he was out on light fuel with a set of tyres that should have given him a time, he didn't get the temperature into the tyres at the correct rate. Traffic probably interrupted one of his management laps, and so it went on. If you got it absolutely right, you got instant grip. Now, at this point, I think I should say, and this is the first thing we should be taking away from Friday, Ferrari are really quick. And when I say quick, what I mean is they're in the Red Bull Honda bracket. I think Red Bull will be tonight saying, oh, well, we're quicker than Ferrari. We've obviously had a fairly difficult day. Things haven't gone right. We had to change Max's setup after the first run, and then there were other incidents, the thing with Stroll later on, and Alex Albon was never really happy with the car. They could say all of that. I think Red Bull Honda actually about where they normally are and will be on Sunday. But I think Ferrari have actually closed the gap to them this weekend anyway. I sent a text to my man at Ferrari, who shall remain nameless, on the Tuesday, a couple of days ago, saying, got a gut feeling that Charles and Ferrari are going to go really well this weekend. Wish you all the best. And he immediately replied, yeah, we think so as well. This circuit should suit our car. By which what I think they mean by that is that some of the things that are not good on the Ferrari won't necessarily show up around Portimão. And on top of that, of course, they have been making some progress with the diffuser, with various aero bits on the car. So the car is definitely better than it was 3 to 4 races ago, which is good, but kind of to be expected with a team as good as Ferrari. And on a circuit like Portimão, Charles obviously is going to be able to show a lot of his natural flair, and the way he can put a package together over the weekend now. And I was really looking forward to seeing that. That was the point of the text. And so it proved. He was really quick throughout both sessions and very impressive, right up there with Red Bull, and occasionally P1 when other drivers were in the pits or doing things, but he's always top 3 or 4, Charles Leclerc I'm talking about. So for all the Ferrari fans out there, I think you can look forward to, all things being equal, which is a big thing around a short circuit like Portimão where plenty of things can go wrong. All things being equal, I think Ferrari are going to have a pretty good weekend, and they could be racing Red Bull Honda for a podium position, dare I say it, touch wood. So that was that point. I think the other one is that under the pressure the drivers were running in order to get a lap time when the tyres were up to temperature, with very small windows. We had a lot of engineers saying, giving instructions on where the traffic was, how to find a gap, when to push, when to not push. To me, and I guess I'm old school, I would say there's too much information coming to the drivers there, not enough driver feel for the lap and when to do it. And when you start driving according to instructions coming into your earpiece, I say singular earpiece because George Russell only had it in one ear at one point, and it was double the volume in the other ear. Must have been, so he had double the volume in one ear and nothing in the other ear, which would have been very unpleasant. Anyway, engineers saying push now, push now. Obviously, they're trying to keep a look at where the car is in the traffic as well, but it's very difficult unless you're actually driving the car to be doing things like that. And to have to respond immediately to push now is difficult. No other word for it. And I think that's why we saw the Lance Stroll, Max Verstappen incident. There's no excuse for what Lance Stroll did. Max was down the inside. It was his corner, and Lance, for some reason, had the DRS open, was just ahead, I guess, as they got to the braking area. As they hit the brakes, Max moved ahead slightly, braked later, less hard, whatever, and then Lance just drove straight across into him. Now, I think a couple of things come out of that. One is that obviously it's still really difficult, and we know this because drivers are often saying it, it's still difficult to see anything in those mirrors. There's lots of blind spots. And you could argue that Lance Stroll had a blind spot and he didn't know that Max was there. But he should have known he was there because Max, half a lap before, had slowed down, let him past. And it was pretty clear that Max was getting ready to do a quick lap. So why wouldn't Lance Stroll have been thinking about that? So that's not really an excuse, I think. On the other side of the coin, I think if you're Max Verstappen, you've been around long enough to have a list of drivers in your head that you would possibly give a bit more room to on a Friday, particularly on a quick corner, and not take it for granted that they're going to be behaving as other drivers would. And those drivers would be, I don't know, Carlos Sainz, Romain Grosjean, Kevin Magnussen, Lance Stroll, probably. If it was Sergio Perez, yeah, you'd probably go for it, knowing that Sergio's got enough, whatever, feel, touch, vision, peripheral vision, to be able to do the right thing. And I think from Max had already had a bit of an incident today, actually, at the beginning of FP2 with Carlos Sainz. Max had been on the inside going into one. Sainz was to his left. And Max, I guess, thought, well, on this occasion, he thought, well, it is Carlos Sainz. I better not take too much for granted. And as he did that, Carlos went zap right across the front of him. Well, I said the front, ran the outside of him into one. Ran a bit wide. And here I should say that I think today around 70 laps were actually deleted. Not that it means much on a Friday, but it's good practice for qualifying in the race. Were deleted because of drivers going over track limits, particularly at turn 1 and out of turn 4. And at one point, Romain Grosjean got on the radio and said, "This is ridiculous. I can't even see if I am over the limit or not. We've got to do something about this." So we'll see tomorrow if things will change there. Is it that difficult? There's the line, there's the curb, don't go over it. But anyway, that's Roma. Anyway, going back to that point, I think that, Max had that incident with Carlos Sainz where Carlos had just sort of gone. So it was surprising in a way that Max didn't give Lance the benefit of the doubt and just back away. Okay, he would have. The problem was he was going to lose his lap, and he'd done a lot of good preparation, got the tyres absolutely right. He'd already backed out of one quick lap because he hadn't got the tyres perfect. So when you go out to do a quick lap, at Portimão, at the moment, it's a 6 or 7 lap production, getting the tyres right up to the point where you can do it. And if you then multiply that by 20 cars and a relatively short lap, you can see why there were lots of traffic issues and why it was a big drama on this Friday. So, point 1, Ferrari are quick. Point 2, Portimão is interesting in that it's condensing a lot of things and making drivers go for a lap time when perhaps it isn't the right moment traffic-wise to do it. That point, I think, is an important one. Let's talk about Pierre Gasly and the fire. Not much to say here. I mean, the car stopped and the engine caught fire, the Honda engine caught fire, presumably a bit of oil or something like that from the gearbox, I don't know, something like that. But what amazed me was that he didn't press the fire extinguisher button in the car. He jumped out of the car and the thing was already in flames, and he could see that from his mirrors for sure. And when he got out, he could see it. But he got out and then beckoned to the marshals to come over, who did a really good job and put it out very quickly. Fireman Sam was there, no problem at all. But I wondered why he didn't press the extinguisher button. They do have extinguishers. For those of you who think, well, Formula One cars, so they don't have them, don't need them because there are so many marshals. They do have them. And it's odd that he didn't press the button. So that was that point that needed to be made, I think. And we had a near miss this afternoon when Daniel Ricciardo was on a very quick lap and the slower car came out. And as Daniel was going into the apex, there was this slow car going 0 miles an hour. And that's something hopefully that will be looked at before the weekend. There's a lot of graining on the left front. As soon as they went from the hard tyre to the medium, the problem with the medium was the graining, and presumably it's going to be the same with the soft. So this probably will mean it's going to be an interesting race from a strategic point of view. And on top of that, there's wind as well, because this circuit is relatively high, and at the top of the circuit you can feel the effect of crosswinds. There was a tailwind going down the straight today, which was impressive to see, but the wind does move around and swirl around, so that's one of the characteristics of Portugal. One of the things that amazed me this morning, I think this comes under the heading of drivers should have more control over things that are important to them, like when to do the lap, how to do the lap, and in Daniel Kvyat's case, the visor on his helmet. He's on the radio saying, what visor I've got? Is this tinted or not? Everything seems very bright. I couldn't believe that. I can't believe that a driver, even at Formula One level, doesn't take absolute painstaking care of exactly what tint of visor he has on his helmet. I know they all have helmet technicians these days, but surely the driver still would be 100% responsible for specifically choosing a visor that he's going to have on a helmet. And it's a bit like that thing with Lewis Hamilton when coming onto the grid in the last race in Germany, when he said there's still play in the wheel. Why wasn't this fixed? And the engineer said, oh, we weren't allowed to do it in scrutiny. Well, why wasn't Lewis told that? It's odd how these small details get swept aside now. Often small details can win or lose you a race. So they were the takeaways from Portimão Friday. Ferrari are, well, let's call it podium quick. I wouldn't say race winning quick because a lot's got to go wrong for Mercedes to say that, but they are potentially up there able to race Max Verstappen for a podium place at Portimão. Secondly, don't read anything into Lewis Hamilton not being in the first three. He was really quick on a heavy load of fuel at the end of FP2. And thirdly, with tyre temperatures difficult to generate and sustain and graining there to be managed, car control is on display. We saw it with Valtteri Bottas. We particularly saw it also with George Russell. Let's hope it continues throughout the weekend. Probably as the circuit picks up grip and the teams get more on top of setup, it will begin to fade. But for the moment, it was brilliant to watch. See you tomorrow.